it's called the Sales and Marketing Blueprint, but what I'm throwing at them is honestly everything I've learned on what to do and how to market and how to sell yourself as a public adjuster to get more leads and get more claims. What's always worked for me, you already know, is networking, building relationships with people. That's what I'm good at. Although I know a little bit about, opening a Google My Business, online ads, print advertising. I know a lot about social media, about basically throwing in all the different ways that you could just sort of grow yourself and then letting the student decide and basically telling them, hey, you should do all of these, but you're going to have one that you're going to feel much more comfortable with, you're going to be much better at, and then you got to go all in on that one.
And there are, in today's day and age, there's newest, latest, and greatest softwares and technology that didn't otherwise exist when we were first coming up. We had to, work on the old school fashion. I mean, obviously the best referral is a one-to-one type referral where you're getting it directly from another individual. But in today's world where you can leverage millions
online
of people,
yeah,
and have a national presence, your message has to get out there and has to resonate with people, or people aren't going to be interested in your services.
It's funny because one thing I'm getting really good at now is just like pitching, just like cold calling and like a door knock and a pitch and stuff like that, because we're getting leads in for different kinds of claims, and all I've got is like an address and I have to find a phone number, and I'm like just straight calling them, just being like, hey, here's what I do, here's how you need me, this and that, and I've gotten better at that. So we're providing all kinds of scripts and different things like that.
That's cool.
By the way, are we live? Are we recording? Is this recording? I'm Vince Perri, commercial claims advocate. This is David Farber.
Thank you for introducing me. I appreciate it.
Who are you?
I'm David Farber, the Farber Law Firm.
Welcome to the Claims Game Podcast with Vince Perri. Get all the tips you need from insurance claim advocates and professionals and grow your public adjusting career to the next level. And now the commercial claims advocate, Vince Perri.
I'm here today at the Farber Law Firm, and every time I come to Miami, one of my must visits is to David. David and I've been working claims for 15 years, or maybe a little bit more now. I've been working claims with David now for about 14 years, probably 15 years now. I'm not going to speak for David, but he's been working claims a lot longer than that. And I just thought we'd take the time here. David Farber is also a partner of our show and really supports everything that we do in regards to educating public adjusters and really getting the word out to making sure that the public adjusters are doing everything that they're supposed to be doing properly, presenting the claim the way that they're supposed to. And I just thought it'd be cool if, we just sort of have a little conversation about, I don't know, claims, life, whatever it is. So I don't know.
Well, thank you again for having me and inviting me and coming to see me in Miami. I'm always happy to see you. I wish you had more time down here so we could hang out and have a beer or so. Or
every time I come here, I can't wait to go back. It's terrible.
Don't diss on Miami, although many people do. This was your terrible hometown for many a moon.
35 years.
Yeah, that's saying something. But now that you are in Tampa or Lutz, you're far happier and in a much more relaxed environment. And that is part of the interesting thing about public adjusting and insurance lawyer type work is that based upon the jurisdiction that you're in, how people respond and deal with claims is far different. And I find that in Miami, we are super fast paced. It's get it done yesterday. And in other jurisdiction, it's well, we're getting there. And we'll get there at some point in time. But people aren't necessarily pushing as hard as we may do down here. Not to say that there aren't those that are bringing a Miami to a Tampa and causing havoc up there, but insurance companies, if it was left up to them, they'd hold on to their money for as long as possible and make that interest. So yeah, I think that what we were talking about before was the educational aspect of public adjusting. So it's not just the coursework that you're bringing, but it's the getting out, even in a cold call setting, making sure that people know what a public adjuster does and how they do it.
Well, you used to make fun of me.
In terms of?
The first course that we came up with was the Elite Claims Process. It's available for sale. And David used to make fun of me because, quite frankly, the process that I put together of following up with the insurance company every 7 days, of calling them out on the fact that they've received the entire file already. You've already done an inspection on the property. We've already provided you with an estimate. We've already provided you with a proof of loss. You've got all the photos that you need. What else do you need?
That's the way it's supposed to go, right?
So
what am I calling you out for?
Because all those letters and templates that I provided to all of our followers and stuff like that, a lot of them was me spitballing with you and you telling me, this is what you need to do. Make sure you send this, because if and when it goes to litigation, if and when you have to send it to an attorney, as attorneys, we want to make sure that you've done your due diligence in pretty much calling out the insurance company on not actually doing what they're supposed to do. And a lot of those letters, a lot of those templates, and a lot of the process that I teach was through my first years of having conversations with you and how I should sort of communicate with the insurance company. So it's not, you didn't call me out, but thank you and kudos to you, man.
No, well, look, I'm glad you took my advice, and it's made our handling of cases so much more successful.
Yeah.
Because over time, being in this business for as long as we have, you find out what the issues are and the problems are, and so you anticipate them before you get to them. And so it's like, did you submit that sworn proof of loss? Well, then it's part of the policy. And even if it's one of those situations where it doesn't say give it within 60 days of the date of the loss, but rather says at our request, what is the harm in getting it to them? Because it's just another feather in your cap to say, hey, I've done everything and anything I can do to get paid on this claim. And my viewpoint has always been and will always be righteous indignation, meaning that it is unacceptable for an insurance company to take too long when people are suffering. People forget that these people, our clients, are their policyholders that pay them money, that we have a dual sort of obligation.
Sort of.
They're supposed to make sure that they get properly paid so that they can rebuild their lives, their family, their everything. And the longer they sit there and suffer for no reason, is the longer they sit there and suffer for no reason. Mm-hmm. And it's just not okay. Mm-hmm. So the fact that in some cases, legislatures have taken the initiative to make prompt payment statutes, I don't know that they're doing enough. I mean, the concept of 90 days, at least in Florida,
60 now.
Well, whatever the time frame may be, is really not that fast. Mm-hmm. It really isn't. I mean, like if I'm sitting in a home as a homeowner and my kitchen just caught on fire and I no longer have a kitchen and there wasn't any arson involved, how long am I supposed to sit there and wait for you to evaluate that the home was damaged by a fire, or that my kitchen is completely destroyed, or that soot has now traveled throughout the home? I mean, what are we ultimately talking about in terms of what an insurance company is supposed to be able to do? Because what are these folks doing on a daily basis other than, or supposed to be, administrating claims, which means get out to the property as quickly as possible, put your estimate together as quickly as possible, pay a reasonable and appropriate amount as quickly as possible, and ultimately, if it's insufficient, to get paid more.
Is it as quickly as possible? Is that what they're supposed to be doing? Is it like, I don't know.
Most policies have this language in there that's called, we will adjust all losses with you. They don't write that in there for their own benefit. They write it in there essentially because they have that dual obligation, which is they have an obligation to work with their policyholder and their agent, which is a public adjuster or an attorney, to adjust the loss. And it's just not simply a unilateral position as much as they would ultimately like it to be, because unilaterally I can just decide that the claim is worth $5. Well, that's nice, but that's not the true facts of life. And how much time have you potentially wasted coming to that determination when all we did was sit there and wait for you to make your $5 determination?
Right.
Which is part of the reason why we've talked about for so many years that keeping the insurance company's feet to the fire creates a record. Essentially when the insurance company blinks, meaning you've done everything and anything you can possibly do to get your client paid and they just won't pay, or they just won't respond, or they won't comply, or they won't do whatever it is, we're now in a position to go and file a potential lawsuit or a notice of intent. And there used to be an argument, although it's not so much anymore since the law has changed, that attorneys were running to the courthouse because they wanted to get those additional attorney's fees and costs that would be on top of it.
I had been looking for an accountant for years, and I was unable to find anybody that I liked, that I worked with, and was able to do what I needed to be done to my taxes and to my accountant. Jeremy David at Noble Wealth has been a godsend to me, my family, and my company. We have saved so much money in taxes I can't even begin to describe, and he knows what he's doing. You need to call Jeremy at Noble Wealth and get yourself the right accountant, because he's the man who's going to help you save on taxes, because ultimately you don't want to be making money, especially if you're self-employed, and having it all go to the IRS. Call Jeremy, call Noble Wealth, and they will help you tremendously with the entire accounting process and your tax situation from A to Z.
And so there would be a whole big analysis as to, well, what efforts did you make in pre-suit to determine whether you could resolve your problem or not? And we found, that many attorneys were rushing to the courthouse and they weren't trying to attempt to resolve the case. And there were times that public adjusters weren't involved, which a public adjuster does serve as a buffer and does serve a useful function for litigation purposes, especially pre-suit, to show, like we talked about, all of those, hey, 7 days, what have you done? 14 days, why haven't you done? And, 30 days, how come I haven't received monies, type of thing. And so when you have that sort of story, because we're all telling a story, everything's about a story, whether it be I am at trial and I'm trying to say, Joe had a loss on such and such day. He walked into his apartment or his home and it was filled with sewage and it was terrible. He called his insurance company. He was expecting them to do the right thing. They sent out an adjuster and I took that adjuster's deposition, and you know what? He told me he never pays for floors, ever. He has no experience in evaluating floor tiles. He never performed any type of sound test. He never determined whether or not there was any water that was trapped underneath the floor or in the walls with a moisture meter. Like, my client didn't know that when this skilled insurance adjuster came out and said, I'm here to help you, sir. So what did he do? He contacted that public adjuster, the white knight in shining armor, and he came out there and he tapped on those tiles. He heard that hollow sound. He got all the evidence together. He maybe helped the client with the water mitigation company because the insurance company didn't tell him. They ultimately did their measurements. They told the insurance company, here are the photographs. Here's where you've got debonding tiles. Here's where you've got moisture penetration. Here's where you've got all of this sort of thing. And the insurance company still turned a blind eye. And so when you tell the story, it helps to show that sort of pattern and practice along the way, which is why we talked about it was something good to do from the beginning, and it still remains to this day to be the best possible thing you can do as a public adjuster for your client. Because at the end of the day, your hope is never to have to come to me. The hope is that they pay appropriately and your client never needs to potentially call me.
There's too many biases. Like, why do they call them the independent adjuster?
Well, it's the same reason they do in personal injury. They had to change the name. They used to call it an IME, which meant independent medical examination. They were hired by the insurance company and they performed their IME. So we would have to file what they call a motion in limine. This is for personal injury. But we would have to file a motion in limine that would say, something that they're not independent. They were never independent. They were hired by the insurance company. They get millions of dollars a year in serving as expert witnesses for insurance company. There is nothing about them that is considered independent. So ultimately, the law or the interpretation was changed, and they're no longer allowed to be called IMEs. They're now called CMEs, which is compulsory medical examiners, which has a different connotation, which is you're being forced to get evaluated from a personal injury perspective by this doctor whose sole function is to get paid
by the insurance company.
So
that's what it should be then. That's what they should change it as, because I thought that the original idea of the independent adjuster, to send an independent person out there, was to give them an independent evaluation for them to ultimately make their coverage determination and make their payment. That's not the case. One of two things happens is I get messages by the way, all the time from independent adjusters wanting to jump ship because of the fact that whatever independent thing that they put together, if they don't abide by all of the guidelines that they are given when they go out to inspect the property, which is always one coat of paint, always DNR this, always DNR that, don't include this, don't include that, then they're not even going to be able to get paid because they're going to continue to get chopped down. So why are we even calling them independent? Because I hate it when the homeowner will say, well, an independent adjuster came over here. I'm like, that's
independent. I always call them the
field adjuster. That's what they are.
And it comes down
but
to...
they're licensed independent adjusters.
Well, I mean, then I think that...
According to the state.
There should be some lobbyist information too. But, I mean...
And then the engineer's the same thing. The copy-paste reports that I get... You know what's funny, David, is that when I started out on this whole commercial claims advocate thing, and I think I'm still pretty... Well, no, I'm not. I'm pretty biased. But I always try to just express... My whole goal with it was not only to educate, but also literally just to spit out on in front of a camera the things that I go through on a daily basis. The BS that I go through. You could go through any freaking video over the last 4.5 years or so, and I never call out an insurance company, and I really never really talk crap about an insurance company. Literally, this is just what I go through. These are the things that happen to me. And, I just wish that we lived in a world where they continue to make our lives much more difficult, but all they're doing is just bullying on the other side and continuing to send their engineers out that are all hired guns as well with these copy-paste reports that they put together. It's the same denial letter every single time. It's always wear and tear, pre-existing damage, faulty workmanship, and it's like there's no true, I feel like what I wanted to get to, there's no true unbiased independent person throughout the entire claims process.
I mean, I think it's twofold, the problem.
Appraisal's the same way, because I was just talking to, I just got through an hour conversation before I came here with appraisers, and we were talking about the same thing. They want us to be non-biased and, disinterested, when I just found out an insurance company that I won't name, we got word from one of their appraisers that they are directing them to push everything to umpire automatically if there's a public adjuster on it.
It doesn't surprise me, unfortunately. But to go back to what you were saying a second ago, I think it comes down to metrics and money.
Always money.
Because metrics are the insurance companies keeping score in terms of who their TPAs are, the third-party administrators, and their field adjusters, in terms of the estimates that they're writing and the value. And obviously, the insurance company recognizes that the higher the estimate, the more money they're going to have to pay. And of course, the field adjuster also recognizes the higher the estimate, the more money the insurance company is going to have to pay. So if they continue to present these estimates that are, in the insurance company's mind, far greater than what they should be, when they have never technically been out to the property, short of the only person who went out, which was the field adjuster, that field adjuster is going to get less work, and his employer is going to get less work.
Right.
And we would like to believe that that's not the case, because some of the guys I take the deposition of, they say, well, the higher the estimate, I get paid more for writing.
They use that one.
And I'm like, well, that's interesting, but whether that's true or not, it doesn't change the fact that you're essentially a volume type guy. You're going out and doing 5 of these a day. How much, independent, evaluation can you even remember for the most part, one claim from the next? I'm asking you something, and how many claims have you handled since the last one? Thousands. I'm like, and you have, if I show you pictures of the home, you have no idea.
You probably don't know the answer to this, but can an independent adjuster provide an estimate and documentation for a policyholder? Or is that just a licensed public adjuster that can do that?
Well, I mean, these loss consultants, they can be independent adjusters.
They could be independent adjusters too, right?
Sure.
And they could be hired by per hour by
as long as they're ultimately representing the insured, and as in a public adjuster capacity, they're only serving as a loss consultant, and they're putting together an estimate. They have a license in which to do so. So there's no harm or prohibition in them writing an estimate.
I'm just saying, because one of the questions that you asked, right, and I know I do it of engineers as well, it's like, okay, you're coming in here as an engineer, unbiased, you're an engineer, this is what you're focusing on. What's the bulk of your work? Oh, it's 100% carrier work. Oh, okay. So what does that tell me? The same thing with these independent adjusters. It's the same thing. That's how they get paid, is by the carrier.
Right. It's the same thing with the engineers and their deposition things. I say, okay, every single person that's on this list, for the most part, is an insurance company that you represented, right?
Yep.
So, and I ask almost in every single deposition of every single person, field adjuster, desk adjuster, corporate representative, all of these people, I say, how long have you been in the insurance industry? And they'll say 20 years. I'll say, that's fantastic.
It's always tough to try to find a dependable and, quite frankly, good appraiser for your claim. Also, you're always looking to try to build your umpire list to make sure you have the right people on there. So whether you're an attorney or a public adjuster, you're going to need Nationwide Appraisal Group. Call Xander at NWA because, quite frankly, great guy, really honest, super experienced, and has a great reputation in the industry. So if you're looking for somebody to put on your appraisal list as well as somebody on your umpire list, you're going to want to call Xander at Nationwide Appraisal Group so that he could be the next guy on your appraisal to get that top dollar that you're looking for on your insurance claim. Go ahead and call them.
And have you ever represented an insured in your 20-year career as a desk, field, whatever? And they will undoubtedly say they have not. So the entirety of your scope of work has been on behalf of insurance companies. It has. And they say it with pride. And there's nothing wrong with it. There are still some good insurance companies that are doing the right thing. But when you start seeing that their estimates are the way that they are, or they're saying they don't have the knowledge, training, background, or skill to be able to do what they're contending or what they're hired by the insurance company to go do, it starts becoming a systemic problem. Like that's why when we were talking about earlier about having a mentor and having someplace to go to be able to be a better professional, which is you need to make sure that you have resources available to you, whether it be FAPIA or other adjusters that are senior to you, or coursework, or going through a training seminar. I can't even, and it's just surprising to me because I'm more cautious than most as an attorney perhaps, but like I take the deposition of some folks where I'm like, okay, you got your license. After you got your license, what did you do? I hung a shingle and I started doing everything. I'm like, well, did you receive any type of training? And the answer would be
no closing, so you have the conference room.
Nice. That was Maria. It's fine.
thanks.
What? It's fine.
I know.
They haven't hung a shingle.
They haven't. They hang a shingle, and I asked them, okay, were you provided with any training from the TPA?
Nope.
Were you provided with any training from the insurance company you're technically representing? No. Did you shadow anybody ever? Nope. Did you get, I go and I do the CEL, whatever you guys call them, continuing educations, and I'm current on that. I'm like, so you took some coursework and but you've never been out in the field with an engineer? Do you know how water impacts upon things or not? And I just sit here and I go, I always anticipated that a lot of these people would be very professional and skilled and knowledgeable. And there are guys that, just like on our side, there are guys that are superstars. And in the defense world, there are guys that are superstars, okay? But when you've got, I guess, as many claims that exist out there and the need to go and have them evaluated by folks, I guess the pool of people starts to go down. Because I don't want to believe it's a systemic problem that just fundamentally exists with all insurance companies and it's all designed to ultimately, save them money. I don't want to believe that there's some guy in the Mr. Burns who's going, excellent. I don't want to believe that.
No, I think it's simple. I mean, they're privately owned companies, or they're publicly traded companies, whatever it is, but it's all about a profit, and at the end of the year, or at the end of the quarter, or at the end of the month, whenever it is that they run their books and they do everything, they have to be profitable. And their biggest expense is claim payouts.
Well, but in Florida,
so if they're going to cut expenses, that's where they're going to cut it.
And that's, now they got rid of the legal fee, so they're about to make a tremendous amount of money.
Which sucks for you, but hopefully, what I'm hoping, quite honestly, and I know every public adjuster is dying for a hurricane, I would not mind having a few years without one.
Let's hope.
Let's let this sort of circle back around, let the water sort of get a little bit more calm here, and then maybe policy prices start going down, because it's affecting real estate like crazy as well.
Sure.
And coverages start coming back, and see if it turns around a little bit.
I mean, that's what we would hope. And I think that that's the intention of the legislature when they decided to do some of the things that they decided to do. I want to believe, just like I've wanted to believe all this time, in the goodness of insurance companies, that they'll act in the goodness of their hearts and just open up their checkbooks and just start paying, what they should be paying, without the threat of lawyers and legal fees and things like that. And I guess only time will tell. I mean, and maybe they do it for a couple of years, and maybe then they say, well, you know what? Nobody's really calling us to task on this, and you know what? Maybe we should consider going back to our old ways. And then things may circle back again. Everything is very cyclical. There was a time when they said, we are not doing appraisal anymore, and they took appraisal out. And then there was a time where we were like, wait, we're getting hit with too many legal fees. We need to go back to appraisal.
I remember when we were getting hit with the the appraisal agreement had the entire scope of work.
The memorandums of appraisal, and you had to then agree or not agree. And
we got capped at 10% for a while. That went away also.
Everything has a way of changing, and is just like a policy. It's a living, breathing document that doesn't necessarily get extinguished simply because there's a claim or a future claim. Life has a way of continuing in a positive fashion that hopefully will result in good things for people in the future. It sucks for the people who are getting tied up in it now. So there are certain times when claims are coming to us where there are a $20,000 claim that is going to be very, very difficult.
It's tough. It's tough.
We actually filed a $7,000 claim the other day because we felt bad for the lady, and we are recognizing that the ability for us to make any money on it is next to nothing. But we believe that there is something that needs to be done in the industry, and I think that the insurance company knows that there's going to be a give and take in this world. So either they're going to help out their policyholders, or they're still going to have to pay legal fees to their defense lawyers, or through a proposal for settlement on our end. So you never truly know how these things are going to shake out, but we can hope for the best and believe that it will go in the policyholder's favor.
You're working in several states throughout the country now, right?
Yep. I've been working in those states for some time, but now I'm focusing a little bit more on those states because I recognize that there are a lot of good claims and claims attorneys in those states, and in some states not so much. And part of it was sort of borne out by the concept of there being attorney's fees and costs. Back in the day when I first started, there were very few and far between law firms doing what I do, and most of the law firms focused on personal injury. And so it was kind of like the best kept secret, which is, if you're good at what you're doing and you know what you're doing, do the best job you can possibly do. There's only a certain number of claims, within a finite grouping. The insurance company, from an actuarial percentage or evaluation, can say, this is what our exposure looks like. But then, again, with like everything we're talking about, the advent of technology and the advent of advertising, and people really starting to realize that claims are really not properly being adjusted.
Right.
And there's a ton more that exist out there,
I think, as far as litigation, like with public adjusters, I think only like 5 or 10% of claims are actually even represented by a public adjuster or something like that.
And I think that that's nationally, and I think that would
probably low. That's probably low.
That would include attorneys' fees too. Attorneys as well. So you think about it's an interesting thing. You've got all of these people paying policyholders, paying insurance company for a pool of money that is available to the policyholders who were ultimately injured. And that money is supposed to be there when one of their policyholders within that group are damaged. The problem, of course, is that if all of them are damaged, like a hurricane, how does an insurance company pay for it? Well, that's why they have, excess carriers and reinsurance and things like that. But that's like the same sort of scenario, just like it is for...
They've been raising their premiums as well, which is making the insurance company have to raise their premium.
Because in the end, it's like everything else. The house always wins. The insurance company will say to the state, hey, we're not going to stay in this because we're not making as much money as we used to, so let us raise our rates. And the legislature gets nervous, and they go, well, we can't have the citizens' property insurance company bear all the responsibility, which is a quasi-governmental insurance company, and because that affects the state of Florida. So we need to make sure that these folks can stay and sell insurance here. So yeah, let's let them raise their rates.
Right.
Which then all the people who are in the pool go, but I didn't have a loss. I've never had a loss. And now my thing is going up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50%. And I just can't afford this anymore. I can't afford to live here anymore. I can't afford, and what did I do as, I'm just part of a pool that was part of this insurance company that I'm paying my money as dutifully as I'm supposed to. And the policyholders don't even have a right to not insure because the mortgage companies force them. So it's really an incestuous problem that we're not going to solve, not you as the public adjuster or me as the attorney. All we can hope for is that there are no hurricanes.
Right.
And that if people do have losses, insurance companies pay appropriately. And that the need for us, because if we're only involved between 5 and 10% of the claims, that there isn't much need for us because maybe there'll be now, because there are less, in terms of policy premiums, maybe there'll be more claims because people won't be so afraid to file them, but then they start paying them more, and then the number of attorneys and public adjusters go down even less than 5 to 10%. If that happens, great. But I'm not holding my breath because if I did, I'd be blue.
So you mentioned earlier that you guys are moving to a new office?
Yeah, we've loved our space, and it's been a great space. And we're just moving to a place down the road. Since we have, like with technology, we have people like you all over the place.
Virtually.
So we don't need necessarily as much space, and still can be as lethal as we have been, and now employ all sorts of different technologies that we didn't have before. So to make us more efficient and better. When I say better, it's because it's sort of like the same thing that you're doing from a public adjusting standpoint, which is like eventually you might get to a scenario where you sell a package, and it's called the public adjusting package that contains the automated ability to timely get things done and accomplished from a public adjusting standpoint. Now, I've had to create those documents for myself, which is why now I can handle a lot more, a lot faster. And not everything is cookie cutter, but we know where the important information has to be changed or modified or whatever. But we have now the ability to do what's necessary a lot faster. Because a lot of times, from what I've heard from other,
give me an example though. What are you talking about as far as what you guys doing?
Like if a hurricane happened, right, and notice of intents needed to be popped out. Well, we have a general now format in terms of what needs to be included in a notice of intent to make it proper, to say what it needs to say as far as we're concerned under Florida law, and be able to communicate what we need to the insurance company with the documentation that it otherwise requires, so as to be able to make an informed decision as to whether it's going to pay it, mediate it, go inspect it again, whatever the case may be. But we can do that now with a press of a button, as opposed to essentially having to figure it out, because we've done the legwork in advance to parse out all of the information that now can pre-populate our stuff. Same thing with our complaints. We have certain ones that we like in relation to a fire or a hurricane or a pipe break or all sorts of other stuff. And we have a set of discovery. So we could take a new client and you tell us, about it, and we think that it's ready because post-loss compliance issues have been properly dealt with. We press a button and we're on file in a matter of moments. And it was no longer a delay. Back in the day, and I guess this may be still true for many other firms, public adjusters would come in and they tell me, they go, the lawyer never talks to me or never talks to the client.
Right.
And I say, well, get the lawyer on the phone. And well, he won't. I'm like, why won't he? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, go to his office. Go to his office and camp out until he does. I'm like, what do you want me to tell you? I don't know. Well, and then I went there to his office and he's got all of these files stacked up like this. And I said, what's the status of the client's claim? Because, my client's asking me, I'm the public adjuster. And I can see that it's sitting right there. And when asked, why haven't these cases been filed? The first response is we just haven't gotten to it. The second response is we don't have sufficient funds to pay the filing fee. The third response is that they have no system and they don't have enough infrastructure to be able to handle it.
Right.
But who suffers?
Policyholder.
the public adjuster suffers because they have to hear from the client.
Yep.
And the client suffers because the client got, they didn't know as to the attorney. The public adjuster didn't know as to the attorney. But this is what people end up finding out over time. And again, this is not to say there aren't good attorneys and that those that weren't first-party attorneys haven't become great first-party attorneys. There are a lot of them. But it's important, just like in your industry, as it is in my industry, that people do the best that they can to make sure that they always have client first, because you have to put yourself in the shoes of the client, right? And that's why I say righteous indignation. I bring it back. Righteous indignation. How long is it okay for an insurance company to sit there on a loss and not pay your client? And if you're sitting in the shoes of that individual and you're looking at that kitchen and you're like, I come home every day, I smell fire. I can't believe I'm still in this house. I'm looking at.
I've got one now. They paid like I don't know, $15,000-$16,000. I've got an estimate over $100,000, and they can't live in the house even though it was only in the kitchen. But we ran a bunch of tests, and the smoke is in the grout. It's in the tile. It is there's no doubt it's gonna have to be removed.
And it makes you wonder. And again, it comes down to money again. Why didn't they send their own person to do the same exact test that you did? And even now, with the results of that test in black and white, how is it still not sufficient to justify the payment? Why are we still messing around with this?
Yep.
And it's very frustrating.
It's very frustrating.
And
because it's gotten a lot harder.
And people said to me, and I've had a conversation recently, they said, well, you're a first party property attorney and a public adjuster. Really, what's the difference? I said, well, we both kind of do the same thing on some level. I go, but the problem from a public adjusting standpoint is that they can only knock on the door as loudly as they possibly can. And the insurance company has two options in that scenario. It can either open the door or it can allow them to bang. And sometimes they're going to let them in and sometimes they're not. And so the attorney is the one who ultimately, depending on if the public adjuster bought a hammer or he bought a battering ram, who then takes that hammer or battering ram, which I prefer the battering ram, and knocks the door down, because ultimately the insurance company doesn't have a choice to keep the door closed. You got to let us in. You may not agree, but you've got to deal with us. And so that's sort of the difference, because from a legal perspective, now that we get you to start spending money with your own attorneys, or you're now finally hiring an engineer after we've sued you to now support some claim from some guy who is not skilled or knowledgeable as it relates to these sort of things, but he's going to somehow backdoor an opinion that is going to support that insufficient and illogical opinion of the field adjuster, independent adjuster, whatever you wish it to be called. And I'm always still surprised that it just, no matter how many depositions I take, I keep finding things out.
Or incompetence.
And I just say, how is this possible? I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. I'm like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just metrics and money.
It's money. It's all about money.
Listen though, but there is a lot of bright aspects of things on the horizon. It's not all doom and gloom. We just deal with the problems, and people don't understand that there are many cases in claims that just go through without a problem. Unfortunately, I'd say that when people feel that way, it's because of a lack of education. Because they're like, yeah, I got what I think I was entitled to.
It's probably more.
And you'll say, I used to do this for people in the past. I say, look, I don't need to represent you. I'm like, but I would like to educate you.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not here to sell myself. Just send me your estimate. Let me see your estimate, and I'll tell you whether you were properly paid or not. And 9 times out of 10,
9.9 times.
Yes, I would say, look, like, they only paid for one cabinet, like the lower cabinet.
Yep.
Like, how do you plan on doing this?
How are you plan on doing your kitchen?
How are you going to do it? Or, they only painted for one wall in one room. Like,
they're not paying for your countertop.
How do you plan on doing? Oh, no. He told me that's all I'm entitled to. He even told me I'm giving you more than you're actually entitled to. And I'm just like, oh my.
And then it sucks, because what happens is the claim that I'm talking about with the fire claim is let's say they do the work that the insurance company wants them to do, which is painting, replacing the cabinets, and that's pretty much it. And then they move back into their home and it still stinks like smoke. Oh, okay, you could just provide us with a supplement. A supplement? I already replaced my cabinets and I already painted the house like you told me to do. My house still stinks. There's a lot more that needs to be done here.
Yeah.
So I need to present it in a way like that, and then I come off as, oh, you got an inflated estimate. It's not an inflated estimate. It's what needs to be done. This house reeks. It's like this house is it's bad.
Look,
They said the house was livable until I actually got involved because the kitchen was the only thing affected. That the bathrooms are still okay. When I walked in there, I was like, you are crazy. By the way, the guy who said that, the guy in charge, you know where I'm going, of making that payment and deciding the additional living expense and deciding on how much the estimate is worth, is in a cubicle in his office, has not stepped foot in the house, and has no idea what's going on. And he's got the audacity to tell the insureds who actually live in this home, or who can't actually, they're not living in the home, that their house is livable.
And I bet you if I took his deposition, he'd probably tell you he's never been in a burnt out home. He's never smelled soot in a home.
Awful.
He's never had to, experience what
I ripped him a new one today.
And
He's gone. He's off the file. I'm like, you're off. You're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, I mean, and that's hard to do too sometimes. I mean, I had to file a motion for sanctions against an attorney, and I haven't done that in 20-something years.
Oh, wow.
Simply because she impeded my ability to ask basic questions. Like, you prepared a report for the insurance company. How many pages is it? Don't answer that question. What do you mean don't answer that question? Like, right. Whether or not how many pages or something. So you're always going to find people that are going to be problematic. And of course, I got an email from somebody else going, okay, we can reset the deposition, and I'm going to step in for this other attorney, and it's going to go the right way. And I'm like, no, but why did it go the wrong way?
Yeah, exactly.
Why did I have to deal with this to begin with?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's all sorts of good.
Another day in the life.
Yeah.
That's David Farber.
Yeah.
I'm Vince Perri. David.
It's been fireside chats.
That was good. I thought this was good. This is good. I think it's very knowledgeable, very educational. I think the audience will like it. Guys, you need to have David on your side. You want to have David on speed dial. At least the office, making sure you're calling the office, making sure when we edit this video, let's make sure we have the phone number here at the bottom as well. But David's been just a wealth of information, just even to this day. Like, he's just, I call him at least weekly because I have a question myself, and I've been doing this for a long time. So any of you guys that are seeking advice, that need some help as to where you're going, and I would tell you across the country, no matter where you public adjust, no matter where you have your insurance claims, if you have a legal question and you're wondering where to go on your insurance claim as a public adjuster or even as a policyholder, you're going to want to call David and ask him, have him do a policy review or something like that, because he's going to tell you straight up if there's even a chance, even if you have a chance, if you don't have a chance, if he has a chance, after all is said and done. I don't want to speak for you, but yeah, what do you tell public adjusters how you can help?
Right. It's awfully nice of you to say, and there are lots of good attorneys out there that exist, and if y'all would like to give me a call, you're always welcome to do so. Knowledge is power. We need to make sure that we ask the right questions and are instructed in the right way, because again, it's the concept of garbage in, garbage out, and I want the industry as a whole to improve. I don't like hearing about how a public adjuster was arrested because he put together an estimate for something that didn't otherwise exist, or did something that was improper. I never want to hear that. I want to hear that when a public adjuster put together an estimate, they feel in full faith and credit as to the explanation for it and why it exists, because it's their license. And if you want to have a successful career as a public adjuster, you need to know the policy. You need to know what you're adjusting. You need to be out to the property, or virtually out to the property, or be connected with the right attorney so that you can have the conversation with him or her so that he can guide you and say, look, this is your problem. This is how you probably have to resolve it. If you can't resolve it, then, have the client potentially give me or somebody else a call that can help them with their solution. Because the problem is that if clients walk away from these scenarios, which I'm sure you as public adjusters, and you in particular, even the best of people and lawyers and public adjusters, clients are going to look at these things and they're going to go, this is just too much, So we don't want, as the professionals involved in the claim, causing any further aggravation or difficulty for them. We want to make it as easy as it can possibly be and know that it's handled from the get-go as well as it possibly can, because that's why they hire us. They hire us to make sure that we can either pound on the door with a battering ram, which is the goal of a public adjuster, and if it knocks over, then great, or that they go with an attorney that can bang that door down and show and demonstrate the story. And so, yeah, give me a call, send me an email. I'm here to help. Let me know.
All right, David. Thanks, man.
As always, my friend.
All right.